In the summer of 1816, four young writers sat together in a lakeside villa in Switzerland, trapped indoors by miserable weather, and challenged each other to write ghost stories. The youngest of them was a woman of only 18. That night, she had a waking nightmare. A scientist stood over the creature he had built and brought to life, and the creature opened its eyes and looked back at him. She woke up and thought, "What terrified me will terrify others too." That single nightmare grew into one of the most influential monster stories in literary history. The book is Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. Its author was Mary Shelley. Here is the story. Mary Shelley was born in London in 1797. Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, the writer known for her defense of women's rights, but Mary lost her mother just days after birth. Her father was William Godwin, one of the leading philosophers and writers of the era. Growing up in a household built on radical ideas, Mary was surrounded by books and argument from childhood. At just 16, she met the young poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, a frequent visitor to her father's circle, and quickly fell in love with him. Their relationship scandalized the conventions of the time, since Percy was already married. They eloped to continental Europe regardless. In the summer of 1816, they found themselves at a villa on Lake Geneva in Switzerland, rented by the poet Lord Byron. That year, the aftermath of a massive volcanic eruption had left Europe unusually cold and rainy, a season later remembered as the year without a summer. Confined indoors for long stretches, the group proposed a contest. Each of them would write a ghost story to pass the time. Mary struggled to come up with an idea, until one night, a waking dream, as she later described it, gave her the story that would become her novel. The scientific debates of the period also shaped her imagination, particularly experiments in galvanism, attempts to use electricity to stir movement in dead tissue. The novel was first published in 1818 without the author's name attached, and a revised edition, more widely read today, appeared in 1831, this time under Mary Shelley's own name. Mary's own life never strayed far from the shadows of her fiction. Percy Shelley drowned in a boating accident off the coast of Italy in 1822, before he had even turned 30. Mary spent much of the rest of her life supporting herself through writing, while also editing and preserving her late husband's poetry for publication. By the time she died in 1851, she had written several more novels, stories, and essays, but it was always this first great book that secured her place in literary history. The novel is told through an unusual frame. A young ship's captain, Robert Walton, is sailing toward the North Pole, and in letters to his sister, he describes rescuing an exhausted, strange man from among the ice. That man is Victor Frankenstein, a young Swiss scientist, and he begins to tell Walton his own story. As a university student, Victor became obsessed with the secret of life itself, with how animation could be given to lifeless matter. Working from parts gathered in graveyards and dissecting rooms, he assembles a body nearly 8 feet tall by his own account. On a stormy night, he brings it to life, and what he sees fills him with horror. Unable to bear the ugliness of what he has created, he flees the laboratory and abandons the creature to fend for itself. Months later, Victor's young brother William is found murdered, and an innocent servant girl, Justine, is accused of the crime and executed. Victor knows the true killer is the being he created, but he cannot bring himself to say so. Years later, Victor comes face to face with his creation in the mountains, and here the novel takes an unexpected turn, because it is no longer the monster who speaks. The abandoned creature tells his own story. Living secretly in a small hovel beside a family's cottage, he describes teaching himself language and emotion by watching them for months through a chink in the wall, and learning to read from a small collection of books he found abandoned in the forest, among them Plutarch's Lives and Milton's Paradise Lost. Yet every time he ventures out and is seen, he is met with the same reaction: screams, thrown stones, people fleeing at the sight of his enormous, disfigured frame. He asks his creator for one thing only, a companion like himself, so that in a world with no one else like him, he will not be entirely alone. Victor agrees at first, even beginning the work in an isolated hut on a remote island. But at the last moment, nearly finished, he tears the new creation apart, afraid of what a second such being might unleash upon the world. That decision spirals the rest of the novel into a cycle of revenge. Victor's closest friend, Henry Clerval, is murdered under mysterious circumstances. Then, on what should have been Victor's wedding day, tragedy strikes his bride, Elizabeth, in what becomes some of the darkest pages in the book. Victor resolves to hunt down his creation, pursuing him to the ends of the earth. The chase drags him north, into the polar ice, and the novel closes the loop back to where it began, aboard Walton's ship. I will not tell you here how the story between Victor and his creation ultimately ends, because that ending is held for the book's final, most powerful pages. The novel's subtitle captures its own spirit: the modern Prometheus. In Greek mythology, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gives it to humanity, and pays an agonizing price for that theft. Victor Frankenstein can be read the same way: a modern Prometheus who steals the secret of life itself and hands humanity a terrible new power, only to pay the heaviest price for it himself. What keeps Frankenstein so widely read today is that it is asking a much deeper question than any monster story requires. It is a novel about the limits of science, about responsibility, about parenthood, and about exclusion. Victor's true failure is not that he gives life to his creation, but that he turns his back on it the instant it opens its eyes. The novel suggests that real monstrosity lives not in an ugly body, but in abandonment and rejection. Today, in an age of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering, every new frontier where humanity reshapes nature seems to invoke Frankenstein's name all over again. The novel has left such a deep mark on culture that most people now assume Frankenstein is the name of the monster rather than the scientist, even though the creature in the book is never given a name at all. A few more details worth knowing. Mary Shelley was only 19 years old when she wrote this novel, and when it was first published, her name did not appear on the cover, since many readers at the time found it hard to believe a woman had written something so dark. Some even assumed the true author was her husband, Percy Shelley. One of the novel's key inspirations was the contemporary fascination with galvanism, experiments using electricity to stir movement in dead animal tissue, which captivated scientists and curious onlookers alike in that era. Since its publication, Frankenstein has been adapted for the stage and screen more times than almost any other novel, but most of these adaptations reduce the articulate, book-reading, philosophically minded creature of the novel into a mute, lumbering monster. In the book itself, the creature is arguably the most well-read and reflective character of all, quoting Milton and Plutarch and reasoning with his creator far more eloquently than popular culture ever gives him credit for. Many critics also consider Frankenstein one of the earliest true works of science fiction, since Victor's creation is not achieved through magic or the supernatural, but through an experiment grounded, at least in spirit, in the real scientific debates of Mary Shelley's own time. We have covered Frankenstein, but I will not describe here the final pages where Victor confronts his creation amid the polar ice, because that confrontation deserves to be read in the author's own words. If you would like to listen to the complete novel as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Subscribe for more books in this series. Until the next one, consider the question Victor Frankenstein could never escape. To create is to take on responsibility. But what happens when the creator runs from it instead?